President Trump launched the expletive heard round the world, urging Israel and Iran to stop fighting.
By the time he arrived in Europe, the ceasefire was in place. Now, how long will it hold?
Tonight, President Trump is in the Netherlands for a meeting of NATO allies.
The summit is taking place as a fragile, hours-old ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding.
Back in Washington, the administration is disputing an early U.S. intelligence assessment of the damage done by the American airstrikes.
According to a CBS News poll out this evening, a vast majority of Americans say Iran having a nuclear weapon would be a, quote, very serious or somewhat serious threat to both the U.S. and to Israel. Still, a majority of those polled, 56%, do not approve of the U.S. military strikes on Iran. Our
senior White House correspondent, Ed O'Keefe, is traveling with the president. He begins our coverage from outside The Hague tonight. Ed.
Good evening. President Trump arrived here hoping to have completely wiped out Iran's nuclear program and having brokered a ceasefire between Iran and Israel. But a new initial intelligence assessment tonight suggests the nuclear ambitions may have just been set back a few months. And that ceasefire nearly collapsed today. Just hours after President Trump first announced the Israel-Iran ceasefire, this morning they exchanged fire again, prompting the president to drop a rhetorical bomb as he vented frustration.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
Aboard Air Force One, the president called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to demand peace. He insisted Iran will never go nuclear.
The last thing on their minds is nuclear weapons. They don't even want to think about nuclear. And our B-2 pilots made this all possible.
And clarified he's not seeking regime change in Iran.
But no, I don't want it. I'd like to see everything calm down as quickly as possible. Regime change takes chaos. And ideally, we don't want to see so much chaos.
That the ceasefire appears to be holding at all is a significant accomplishment for the president. He pumped his fists as he arrived at the summit, and on his way here was congratulated by NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte in a text message. He added, "You are flying into another big success in The Hague this evening." That success is convincing most NATO members to start spending more on their militaries. Leaders are finalizing plans to spend up to 5% of their GDP in the coming years on troops, tanks, aircraft, and weapons, and related infrastructure. You will achieve something no American president in decades could get done, the Secretary General added in his flattering text. But as Russia bombards Ukraine, as it did again today, attacking 3 cities, that war remains a big focus of this summit.
Ed, can we go back to that intelligence assessment of the bombing? What more can you tell us about that?
So CBS News has learned a classified preliminary assessment by the Defense Intelligence Agency has found that Iran's nuclear ambitions may have just been set back by a few months because those 3 nuclear sites struck over the weekend were damaged but not completely obliterated, as the president has claimed. The White House is pushing back on this report tonight, saying it's flat out wrong and that it's being peddled by a, quote, low-level loser in the intelligence community. But one source tells CBS News that these kinds of preliminary assessments are thoughtfully prepared and ultimately tend to hold up.
Okay, Ed O'Keefe at The Hague tonight with the president. Thank you.
We were curious about the perspective Iranians living in the United States have about the war.
Nearly 300,000 Iranian Americans live in California, many in the Westwood neighborhood of Los Angeles, also known as Little Tehran.
Jonathan Vigliotti is there.
Los Angeles is home to the largest population of Iranians outside of Iran. And at some places here in Westwood, Farsi is spoken more than English.
This multi-block section of shops and cafes near the campus of UCLA is what's known as Persian Square. That's where we met restaurant owner Ruzbeh Farahanipur.
You still have family in Iran?
Extended family, and I have lots of the people and friends. I worried about them daily basis.
He was 7 years old when Iran's clerical regime came to power in 1979. Then his family endured the 8-year war with Iraq. As a college student, he led protests against the regime, was arrested, tortured, and in 1999, he tells us, marked for death.
The day I see my execution judgment in the newspaper, I escaped the country.
If there's anyone that wants the regime as it stands to end. It's you.
But the problem is, if we are only targeting to overthrowing this regime and we don't have any plan for replacement or create a vacuum of the power, I don't know what's going to happen next.
We absolutely cannot bomb a people into peace. We can't bully Iran into a deal.
Fatima Mashouf was 3 years old when her family fled Iran in 1990, seeking a better life. They found it here in California.
My generation has never lived with true feeling of peace. We were born running to bunkers.
She's an attorney and mother of 3. Mashouf has returned often to Iran to visit family.
I want them to be tied to their roots because it's a beautiful thing.
If peace, democracy restored to Iran, would you go back home, or is this now?
This is my home. Westwood is my home, my final destination and my final address.
Farah Honeypour says he is worried about his family in Iran and the Iranian regime becoming more isolated and extreme as a result of the conflict.
Jonathan Vigliotti in Los Angeles tonight. Thank you.
Now more of the top stories from around the world in tonight's Evening News Roundup. CBS's Scott MacFarlane reports the FBI is intensifying its counterterrorism efforts following the U.S. attack on Iran. Scott will have more on the potential threats tomorrow on the CBS Evening News.
Dozens of cities broke records today in the brutal heat wave across the eastern half of the country. Utility workers in Indianapolis practiced climbing poles, even as the heat index hit triple digits. In Clark, New Jersey, no relief with the power out. Even the Dairy Queen had to shut down. Lonnie Quinn will have more in a moment on the dangers caused by the heat, even at nighttime.
The National Transportation Safety Board says Boeing and the FAA both share blame for an incident last year when a door plug blew out on a passenger jet at 16,000 feet. Senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve has more on what investigators found.
About 6 minutes after Alaska Flight 1282 took off from Portland in January 2024, a door panel blew out. The bolts that should have held it in place were missing. The accident left this gaping hole in the plane. 177 people were on board, 8 suffered minor injuries. NTSB investigators found fault with Boeing's training, production, documentation, and safety culture. The board also faulted the FAA's oversight.
The safety deficiencies that led to this accident should have been evident.
NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy.
Is this all due to human error on the manufacturing floor at Boeing?
It is due to a process issue, a process failure. So really what we needed here was a design change or a better process.
When this 737 MAX was being manufactured, Boeing removed that door panel to make repairs to rivets nearby. Paperwork that would have triggered additional inspections was never created, and the panel was reinstalled without the bolts. The team that did the work had never opened that kind of door panel before.
All of a sudden, just this huge bang happened. It sounded like a firework going off like right in your ears, just like so loud. And then a white cloud went through the plane and the mask dropped down.
Shandy Brewer was sitting in row 10 that night, an experience that stuck with her.
As soon as I step onto an airplane, tears start pouring down my face every single time. I haven't been on a flight where that doesn't happen.
Do you feel that Boeing airplanes are safe for Americans to fly on today?
I do feel like Boeing airplanes are safe. I fly on Boeing airplanes all the time. Could they improve safety? Sure, yes. We found that in our investigation, and we hope to help them close any gaps that remain.
And Chris, John and I were talking with you earlier today about concerning information when it comes to small children flying with their parents. What else can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there were 4 kids flying alone and 3 that were on their parents' laps. The NTSB is particularly concerned about lap children because in a significant emergency, they worry the parents may not be able to keep holding on to the child. Now, both Boeing and the FAA tell us they are reviewing the findings and the recommendations. They've made significant changes. The NTSB believes there's more work to be done.
Chris Van Cleve, thank you.
Our CBS News poll out tonight includes questions on the condition of the economy. Almost 6 in 10 Americans say it is in bad shape. That assessment has not changed since last month, and stocks, however, were up across the board today. So we've asked Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady to explain what is going on here. And Kelly, S&P in near record territory today.
Yeah, you know, investors, I think they're getting more hopeful that this Middle Eastern ceasefire is going to last. They also love the fact that oil prices are down. And that stock right there, if you peel back the onion, though, it's really driven by big tech stocks. I'm talking Meta, Netflix, Nvidia, Microsoft, all seeing big year-to-date gains, versus the consumer discretionary sector is actually down. So the S&P is really buoyed by big tech.
Stock market is one thing, but what about the way people feel? Confidence is way down.
We got a new consumer confidence reading, down because people are feeling concerned still about tariffs, rising prices, geopolitical tensions. Remember, the stock market, it is not the economy. Now, consumers, they may not be right, but you have to remember, people are looking at the reality of their financial situation. They're getting worried. An investor is someone making a bet on a company 10 years down the line.
Two separate concepts there. Kelly O'Grady, thank you so much. Still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, Lonnie Quinn on the heat records that melted away today. And we'll have these stories.
I'm Scott McFarland in McDowell County, West Virginia. What happens when the catastrophic flood might be the second biggest problem in town? I'm David Schechter in Texas. More extreme summer days are increasing the risk of preterm birth. Experts say mothers need more warnings. That story's coming up on the CBS Evening News.
New York City hit a record high of 99 degrees today.
Philadelphia topped that, hitting 100.
Lonnie Quinn here. The question everybody wants to know is, how long is this heat wave going to last, Lonnie?
One more day, guys. Thursday, it should be gone. Now, you're talking about records. Boston had the hottest June day they've ever experienced. They hit 102 degrees. Those records go back to the late 1800s. Picture behind me right now, this is Philadelphia. There's a really interesting heat dome story relating to Philadelphia. So take a look at this. Heat dome traps the air, okay? It doesn't allow the hot air to escape. So it's not only super hot during the afternoons, but your overnight lows don't get cold. So yesterday, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you were 99 in Philadelphia. This is yesterday. It felt like 108. By the time you got to this morning at 6 a.m., it was feeling like 91 degrees outside. I mean, come on, their high temperature should max out in the 80s. It's feeling like 91 at 6 a.m., the coldest time of your day. 2 p.m. this afternoon, it felt like 106. Tomorrow morning, feels like 85. Tomorrow afternoon, it's feeling like 105. Like I said, you're going to get to Thursday, we're going to erase the heat. But the heat dome stays in effect. This is like putting a big blanket over the atmosphere. The heat just can't escape, all right? High pressure gives you sinking air. That air drops, it heats up, but it can't escape. So it just recirculates. You're hot in the afternoon and you're warm in the morning. So as a matter of fact, tomorrow morning, 70 to 80 records will be set for the hottest start we've ever had to June 25th, anywhere from Tallahassee all the way up to Boston. Scientists fear that this is even more important than watching those afternoon temperatures. It's how cold you don't get during the overnight. Now, we will set records tomorrow. 99 for Philadelphia and Atlanta are records, and a record in Raleigh at 100. Gentlemen?
Oh, boy. All right, Lonnie, thank you.
Health officials say the heat can be especially dangerous for pregnant women.
Our national environmental correspondent, David Schechter, reports on how climate change is raising those risks.
3. Oh, so close.
With our summers getting hotter, it's also getting harder for some pregnant women to cope with the heat. Just ask Megan Crow, who's in her second trimester with her second child.
All right, let's go look at the chickens.
I watched you playing. You guys were having a great time. Feeling anything at all while that was going on?
Oh, yeah, my stomach's already tight.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
During pregnancy, the body loses some of its ability to regulate heat. That can lead to dehydration and, in extreme cases, early labor. Dr. Catherine Principe is Crow's OBGYN in Fort Worth.
Is that something that you ever think about?
Where we're seeing patients coming into the triage area with preterm contractions from dehydration a little bit earlier in the year and lasting it maybe a little bit later into October.
New research from the nonprofit Climate Central looked at the connection between climate change and pregnancy and found women in the U.S. now experience 12 additional extremely hot days, leading to a greater risk of preterm birth and infant mortality.
I feel like they don't have the knowledge.
Public health researcher Robin Stassen was surprised at how little heat risk information states offer for pregnant women. In her research, she found that 11 state health websites didn't have information on heat risks. 31 states and D.C. offered basic heat safety tips, but nothing on pregnancy. And only 8 states had specific warnings about heat and pregnancy.
How could states not be talking about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think people are now actually recognizing that heat is an issue. Climate change is happening.
Expectant mom Megan Crow says women deserve more information about the dangers they face.
It is really concerning if things are getting worse that it's going to be harder for us to do so, to stay on top of a healthy pregnancy.
And that was David Schechter reporting from Dallas, where it was 94 degrees today.
Eye in America is next with neighbors helping neighbors after devastating storms.
West Virginia has seen a lot of unwanted water. This month, flash floods swept through the city of Wheeling, killing at least 8 people. In February, West Virginia's coal country was slammed. In tonight's Eye on America, Scott McFarland shows us how that part of the state is still struggling.
The floodwaters tore through McDowell County, West Virginia so fast in February.
All the flooring is gone.
Reverend Brad Davis barely had time to grab his 2 cats before his house was swamped.
How would you describe the flood from February?
The truest meaning of the word apocalypse, in that it pulled back the veil and just underscored all of the challenges that we are facing here as a community.
This is what it looks like months later in one of the poorest counties in one of America's poorest states.
When the flood hits, you go into the upper level of the house.
Yeah. So much is ruined in Sean Rutherford's mountain home. The debris looked like a mountain outside.
You know, my kids shouldn't have to live like this. Go from a decent looking house to that now. So, I mean, it's hard. It really is. It kind of tears you down mentally, physically.
The city of Welch, the McDowell County seat, boomed during the boom days of coal, but it was already sliding when John F. Kennedy came here to campaign in 1960. And the poverty's only continued as some of the coal industry cratered.
We've been hemorrhaging population for the last 80 years.
The question they're asking here is, how do you fully recover in a community where the poverty rate is so high, where population is leaving so quickly, the Walmart closed?
In McDowell County, the U.S. Census says the average life expectancy is 12 years less than the rest of the country, with the highest drug overdose rate in America.
The people here feel like they have been forgotten. Everyone has effectively forgotten about them and turned their backs on them.
Approximately $12 million of federal relief has come, but the money doesn't come close to covering all the cleanup. It's a brutal cycle. With the devastation and the insufficient aid comes a frustration with government. Less than half the registered voters went to the polls in the last election. But there's some light glimmering in all the darkness, a ground-up relief response.
We serve just over 50,000 free meals for the county.
You serve 50,000 meals?
Yep.
Including a chef turned handyman feeding the hungry and a photographer shining a light on the suffering.
The wires were going down.
Just when the problems seem insurmountable in this part of the country, tomorrow we'll meet 2 people working tirelessly to be part of the solution. For Eye on America, I'm Scott McFarland in Welch, West Virginia.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Air Supra. Visit us at airsupra.com.
That's the CBS Evening News for tonight.
And we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Have a good night.
Welcome to CBS Evening News Plus. I'm John Dickerson. A nationwide crackdown leads to the arrest of nearly a dozen Iranian nationals, at least one with ties to militant groups. Nicole Skanga will have the report. And a Marine Corps veteran from Louisiana calls his wife's deportation a betrayal. CBS's Katie Weiss reports that it was at a routine immigration appointment that she was taken into custody. Those stories and more right after our news headlines. A ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding. President Trump started the day appearing to be angry at both countries for launching attacks before and after his truce was to take effect. The White House is dismissing reports that the U.S. missile barrage which the president called a tremendous success, only set back Iran's nuclear program by several months. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called that, quote, flat out wrong. Americans are more pessimistic about the economy, especially the impact of tariffs. That's according to the Conference Board, which measures consumer confidence, which is now at its lowest level since the COVID-19 pandemic. On Capitol Hill, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell told Congress the board will have to wait to see just how much tariffs will increase prices and slow growth this summer before changing interest rates. And a memorial was held in Surfside, Florida at 1:22 this morning, exactly 4 years after a 12-story condo complex collapsed, killing 98 people. In an updated report, investigators blame the collapse on shoddy construction and design flaws from when the residence was built nearly 40 years ago. We begin tonight with the arrest of Iranian nationals, 11 arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in 48 hours. It is the continuation of the administration's effort to deport migrants it claims are a threat to public safety. Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga joins me now. Nicole, what do we know about these 11 who were arrested?
Yeah, John, among these Iranian foreign nationals, 11 men arrested in 9 cities in 8 states over, you said it, 48 hours. And the targeted operations began on Sunday. Now, 5 of those detained by ICE have previous criminal convictions. 3 of these really stood out to me. ICE officials allege Ribvar Karimi is a former Iranian army sniper. And when federal agents arrested him near Atlanta, he was carrying, get this, an Islamic Republic of Iran Army identification card. Now, Youssef Meridano was arrested in central Mississippi just 4 months after he appeared on the National Counterterrorism Center's known or suspected terrorism watch list. And authorities say 56-year-old Mehran Makari Saheli is a former Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps member with admitted connections to Hezbollah. He was convicted of being a felon in possession of a firearm in Minneapolis, where he was sentenced to 15 months in prison formerly, and an immigration judge ordered him removed in June of 2022. But he remained in the U.S. illegally, that is, until authorities took him in the St. Paul area on Sunday.
Nicole, you mentioned this started on Sunday. That's also when the military campaign started against Iran. Connection?
Yeah, that's right. And this is also when DHS activated its National Terrorism Advisory System that warns against retaliatory violence here in the homeland, and Iranian-sponsored or even inspired attacks are really a concern among intel officials I've been speaking with. To be clear, John, ICE officials did not tie any of these men to a specific credible terrorism plot against the United States. Instead, they said all of those arrested had criminal charges or convictions, meaning they were not just here in the U.S. illegally, and alleged they represented a threat to public safety. ICE officials have framed these targeted operations as part of the Trump administration's larger immigration crackdown. It's also the case, John, that national security, though, does not happen in a vacuum.
Indeed. Nicole Skanga, thank you. New detention numbers reveal the scope of the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. CBS News has learned that ICE is currently holding 59,000 migrants at facilities across the United States. That's a record high, and 20,000 over the number held in the final days of the Biden administration. That puts detention centers at 140% over capacity of what has been funded by Congress. Our Camila Montoya Galvez joins me now. Camila, let's start with the 59,000. Who are they? What's the makeup of this group?
Well, John, the internal ICE data that we obtained shows that half of these 59,000 detainees are immigrants who are in the country illegally but lack any criminal charges or convictions. They are non-criminals who are facing civil immigration charges. We do know that 30% of the detainees or so do have criminal convictions, and this underscores that the administration's aggressive crackdown on illegal immigration is extending well beyond criminals and dangerous individuals. In terms of the cost, it is very significant, John. According to one estimate, it costs ICE on average $165 daily to house one detainee. That means that at the current rate, ICE is spending about nearly $10 million daily to house 59,000 individuals.
Wow. Let me ask you about the Supreme Court ruling yesterday that's a part of this question of whether the administration can send people to third countries. In other words, not their home country when they deport them. Where does that story stand?
Well, just to level set, back in April, a federal judge in Boston said that the administration could not deport migrants to third countries, meaning nations that are not their own, unless it actually gave them notice and a meaningful chance to contest their deportation. And that ruling blocked efforts by the administration to send people from Africa, Latin America, and other places to countries like Libya and South Sudan. But now the Supreme Court has suspended that order while the case continues to be litigated throughout the country. What is really unclear right now is how this order applies to a group of 8 men with serious criminal records who the administration attempted to deport to South Sudan and who are now stuck, John, in the East African country of Djibouti.
All right, Camila Montoya-Gavez, thank you. Many of those detained are non-citizens with pending deportation orders. Since President Trump returned to the White House, those undocumented immigrants, along with those convicted of crimes, have been prioritized for arrest. CBS's Katie Weiss reports from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. On one detention, a Marine veteran is calling a betrayal.
What happened? I come home from work and my best friend, my partner, isn't here.
Being a single dad was never in this Marine veteran's plans. But it's been his reality since May when Adrian Cluad and his wife Paula went to an immigration check-in.
Which turned out to be 3 ICE agents there to arrest my wife.
What was going through your mind?
I was furious. I felt betrayed. I mean, they told us we had passed the interview.
The married couple had just welcomed their second child, a baby girl. They also have a toddler.
They knew I was a veteran. They just ripped her away from me and her children, from her breastfeeding the, newborn daughter. It's almost inhumane.
He says they were going through the proper channels to get her a green card, but U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services says she ignored a deportation order in 2018. His wife was brought to the U.S. at 14 by her mother, who was seeking asylum, but claims she was later abandoned.
My wife was not only a minor, but homeless when that removal order was issued. Her mom skipped the appointment. My wife was living in a homeless shelter in CPS care. And there was no way for her to know about the removal order.
The U.S. has long had a program called Parole in Place, which gives military family members who are undocumented a streamlined path to a green card. But the Trump administration has made non-citizens with pending deportation orders a priority for arrests.
Hey, baby.
Adrian Cluad now only sees his wife when he drives his kids 8 hours each week to visit her in a Louisiana detention center.
All right, I love you. I want my kids to remember who their mom is. I don't want her to be gone for the next, God knows how long, and she becomes a distant memory for them. Come on.
She's one of more than 6,600 non-citizen parents of U.S. citizen children detained in the last 9 months. Katie Weiss, CBS News, Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Now, here are 3 things to know. The Trump administration plans to open nearly 59 million acres of protected national forest to logging and mining. Conservationists warn it could fragment some of America's pristine landscapes, like the largest temperate rainforest, and habitat for animals from the lynx to black bears. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins called the plan common sense stewardship that will create jobs and improve forest health. Britain has big plans to honor its longest reigning monarch. The memorial to Queen Elizabeth II will be built in a park across from Buckingham Palace and will feature a Queen Elizabeth on horseback and a glass bridge based on the tiara she wore on her wedding day. Elizabeth died in 2022 after more than 70 years on the throne. And a remarkable piece of history was unearthed in Virginia, the remnants of a school that once educated enslaved and freed black children in the 1760s. The discovery was made during building renovations on the campus of William and Mary. The Williamsburg Bray School operated just prior to the Revolutionary War. Virginia outlawed educating slaves in the early 1830s. Coming up on CBS Evening News Plus, we go in depth on the choice some undocumented parents are making to leave the U.S. before they get detained by immigration agents.
And why did she decide to self-deport?
She wanted to make sure that she was in control of her life.
The Department of Homeland Security reports more than 100,000 immigrants have been arrested for deportation since President Trump returned to the Oval Office. But many migrants aren't waiting for immigration agents to detain them at work sites or in courtrooms. In tonight's In Depth, CBS's Adam Yamaguchi highlights the impact felt by families when a parent decides to self-deport.
As I stepped up raids across Los Angeles, Julie Ear and her family made a difficult drive south to the Tijuana airport.
Her mother, Regina Higuera, had lived in the U.S. for 36 years. But 3 weeks ago, she left home, her children and her grandchildren, and headed back to her birthplace in Mexico.
Bye, Mom. Bye, Mom. When the ICE raids started picking up on other states, we knew that we were going to get hit eventually. Nobody's safe.
And why did she decide to self-deport?
She wanted to make sure that she was in control of her life. She didn't like the uncertainty of somebody coming into her house or her job or being pulled over and just telling her, oh, now you're in Mexico. People are being detained for weeks without knowing where they are.
Higuera had crossed into the U.S. illegally when she was only 15 and went straight to work in LA's garment factories. She'd intended just to stay for a while, earn enough money, and go back to Mexico. But then she met her husband and started a family.
She's been contributing to the economy, paying taxes every year. There's no benefit for being undocumented. They don't get benefits. She's not gonna get a pension. She doesn't have a 401k. She never got food stamps. She didn't get welfare. People wanna come here to work. And, you know, it's not illegal to wanna work.
Now reunited with her mom in Guerrero, Mexico, she says nearly everything outside of her home is unfamiliar.
Are you glad that you left the U.S.?
I'm happy because I'm no longer stressed. But there are moments when I think about all of you and I get sad. That's why I have such a strong daughter. From a very young age, I taught her we have to be strong no matter what situation we find ourselves in.
Oh, you miss her?
Yeah. I talk to her every day. We text all day. Sometimes I forget that she's so far because we talk so much. But then when the family thing happens, that's when I'm like, oh my God, you're actually gone. You're not actually here.
The better life she worked to build in the U.S. being carried on by her children, while she starts back where she began. Adam Yamaguchi, CBS News, Los Angeles.
It's been 3 years since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, allowing individual states to ban abortion. Yet the number of abortions has increased. The expansion of telehealth across state lines is cited as a primary reason, with 1 out of 4 abortions now accessed through telemedicine. For tonight's interview, we are joined by Julie Rovner, Chief Washington Correspondent for KFF Health News. Thank you for being with us. What is the state?
Thanks for having me.
Right now, the state of abortion across the country. What's the story?
Well, the story is really, as you were saying, about abortion pills. Nearly half the states now have some kind of abortion ban, but many abortions are still taking place because the Biden administration made abortion pills available via telehealth, and a lot of people are taking advantage of that.
And where does that then locate the fight over abortion rights in the courts and in the public discourse?
Well, it is very much in the courts because, of course, we have a number of states who are now affirmatively protecting abortion providers who are prescribing these pills via telehealth. And we have a couple of states, particularly Texas and Louisiana, who are trying to go after providers. In this case, they're both going after the same provider in New York. And the state of New York is protecting that provider, saying that what she's doing in New York is perfectly legal. And it is not New York's problem that Texas and Louisiana have bans. So obviously, this is something that's going to be decided eventually by the courts.
And what do you make of the numbers of abortion that have been performed in the 3 years since Roe was overturned?
Well, I can tell you that anti-abortion forces are very unhappy that even though they got their fondest wish, Roe v. Wade overturned, many states implementing full or partial bans on abortion, the number of abortions has not really gone down. And I think even, without the ease of getting abortion pills, we probably would have seen a continuation of a lot of abortions we know this from around the world, even when abortion is illegal, women will seek it and they will get it. It will just be less safe and harder for them. So we know that abortion is not something that goes away when it's made illegal. But in this case, we had sort of the countervailing forces of making it easier in some ways for people to get abortions. At the same time, some states were trying to make it harder.
And Julie, do we know anything about if the numbers have stayed roughly the same, about who is getting an abortion?
Well, I mean, it's basically the same people that have always been getting abortion. Most women who get abortions already have children. It's not sort of the teens having unprotected sex. It's always been young women who feel for possibly economic reasons they can't afford to have another child, or who are not in safe relationships. And also women, people get abortions for medical reasons. And that's been a big issue in these states with bans, that people who have pregnancy complications, even when those pregnancy complications threaten their health, have been unable to get abortions. And that is a continuing fight in a number of states.
And where is the question of the public opinion about abortion? Is that still the same kind of fight that it was before Roe was overturned?
It very much is. I mean, the public does not support particularly these strict abortion bans. It's funny, we've seen several states now pass ballot measures to protect abortion rights in those states, and yet legislators in those states are trying to basically roll those back. So we're seeing fights between state lawmakers and their own voters who have voted for these abortion protections. So we know that generally the public does not support sweeping abortion bans. I think that's why President Donald Trump has tried to downplay this issue significantly.
Julie Rovner from KFF Health News, thank you so much for being with us. The AI revolution is coming for your job and coming to give you one. I'll explain in my reporter's notebook. Apocalyptic job news about artificial intelligence darts into the news cycle pretty regularly. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy recently predicted it will reduce the company's workforce. Dario Amodei, CEO of the AI company Anthropic, predicted sweeping white-collar job eliminations. So I've been talking to experts to get a better picture about what this future will look like. First, lots of jobs will disappear, as they have in previous technological revolutions. Automatic elevators replace the manual operator. Switchboard attendants vanished. But AI will create new jobs we've never even thought of yet. Carl Benedict Fry, an economist at Oxford University, uses the analogy of the telescope. Its discovery launched new scientific fields in physics and astronomy, fundamentally expanding human knowledge. This job transformation is why the World Economic Forum projects AI will cause a net increase of 78 million jobs by 2030. Daron Acemoglu, Nobel Prize-winning economist at MIT, argues for what he calls a pro-worker AI that doesn't replace the worker, but where AI augments human skill. Think of an airline mechanic who collaborates with the data crunching power of AI to solve a repair puzzle, or AI that helps a teacher understand each student's unique struggles. Armed with information from quizzes, tests, interviews, the teacher can then deploy the personal touch to make their job more effective. While the shape of future jobs remains unclear, both economists identify a set of essential skills workers will need. These include creativity. AI crunches data, but humans can draw novel connections. Adaptability. AI will require regular retraining with new technology and will need to be okay with that constant change. And critical thinking, knowing when and how to use AI and how to read the results. Finally, an ability to interact with other humans, an area where, for the moment, we still have an advantage over the machines.